share a common interest in Iranian Sufism, Iranian esoteric Shi'ism specifically, which will be the subject of this lecture here today. It's been my pleasure to invite Nima Wahid-Azal to give this presentation for us here today and to organize this lecture. So, without further ado, Nima Wahid-Azal, I should mention, is the Sheikh of a Sufi order called the Fatimiyya Sufi order, which incidentally I'm not a member of, but this is something which is very interesting, which Nima is the subject of his research and the subject of his authorship. So, without further ado, I'll introduce Nima Wahid-Azal.
La ilaha illallah. I'll start with an exordium prayer in Persian Arabic and its translation, which encapsulates, at least from a prayer phenomenology, what I will be speaking about tonight. So I'll read the exordium first in the original language and then the translation. Bismillah al-Muta'ali al-Muta'ala. تسبیح و تقدیس شایسته ذات اقدس حضرت احدیت لم یزل و لا یزالی بوده و هست که به استقلال استجلال کنه هویت ازلی وجود مطلق خود منزه بوده از وصف و اشارات کل شیء و به امتناع ارتفاع عظمت علویت لا نهایی کینونیت لا به شرط واحدی ابدی خود متعالی خواهد بود از عرفان و ادراک کل شیء. نشناخته است او را هیچ شیئی به حق شناختن و نه خواهد شناخت او را هیچ شیئی به حق شناختن الا به معرفت مشیت اولا که هست وجه الله و دائم المتجلی بر هیکل طلسمات الواح افاده وجودیه، چون اول الجود هو الوجود والوجود هو المعلوم والمعلوم هو نفس العلم والعلم هو مشيئة والمشيئة هو المحبة، لأن خلق الله كل شيء بالمشيئة وخلق المشيئة بنفسها وهي الذكر الأول وهذا هو ذكر الأزل. پس بدانید ای اهل حقیقت که عرفان به نقطه مشیت الهی هست تصدیق در منزله تفرید و تشهد به ظهور شمس حقیقت از لمعات نور اشرق من صبح الازل در مشهد تجرید از مواقع تحلیل و ازواق جذب الاحدیه لصفت توحید و انما البهاء من الله ثم النور من نور على نور الى نور على واحد الاول وجميع الأنبياء والأولياء وحياكل التوحيد كلهم أجمعين والثناء من الله ثم مجده على من اتبع إشراقات الهدى والحمد لله نور العالمين. In the name of God, the High Exalted, the Most Exaltedly High. Glory and sanctification is and has always been worthy of the most holy essence of the unchanged and unchangeable presence of the exclusive oneness, when the independence of the magisterial depth of the absolute existence of its pre-eternal ipseity has been forever transcended beyond the ascription or indication of all things, and by the inaccessibility of the upraised height, of the tremendousness, of the infinite altitude, of the non-delimited existentiality, of the inclusive unity of its post-eternality, shall remain loftily above the gnosis or comprehension of all things. Nothing has grasped it how it deserves to be grasped, nor shall anything ever grasp it how it deserves to be grasped, other than by the noetic comprehension of the primal will, who is the face of God, and the one constant and transfigurative self-disclosure upon the talismanic forms of the tablets of the subtilized heart fluxes of being. Inasmuch as the first divine effusion is being, and being is the known, and the known is the soul of knowledge, and knowledge is the will, and the will is love. because God created the will as its logos self and generated things by the will. For this is the first remembrance, and that is the remembrance of pre-eternity. So understand, O folk of the divine realities, that gnosis of the point of the divine will is that confirmation in the way station of singularization and the witnessing of the manifestation of the Son of Reality from the irradiations of a light illuminating from the dawn of pre-eternity and the locus of the apperception of abstraction from the epiphanic setting placements of the attestation of the divine unity in the tasting of the attractions of the divine oneness by the attributive apprehension of the divine unicity. And the splendor from God and the light from light upon light to light be upon the first unity, the divine messengers, the vicegerent providential guides, and the talismanic temples of unicity, all of them. The luminescence of God and its glory be upon whomsoever follows the illuminations of the guidance, and praise be to God, the light of all the worlds. Amabad. The typology of apotheosis, or deification, making divine, is one that has been part of Christian theology, and especially Eastern Orthodox Christian theology, for quite a long time. Over the last 20 to 30 years in esoteric studies, the typology of apotheosis has also made its way as a discussion. In fact, one of my friends in Australia just finished a dissertation on apotheosis in the age of the death of God. The question of apotheosis has only been discussed by people like Henry Corbin. The typology itself is still in the rudimentary stages, so I would like to propose that the typology of apotheosis is one of the only ones that can explain a phenomenon such as the 19th century Bâbí movement, and even its precursor, at least on the doctrinal level, the Sheikhis, which I'm about to speak about. I would, however, bracket this by saying that this typology should be informed by a narrative or a proof text. And I would propose that the narrative of apotheosis within Islamic esotericism, when approached from the methodology of phenomenology, should be informed by the hadith al-Haqiqah, or the hadith Kumail, the dialogue that is said to have occurred between Imam Ali, the commander of the faithful, and his disciple Kumail ibn Ziyad al-Nakhai, wherein this dialogue, Kumail asked Ali, O commander of the faithful, what is ultimate reality? And Ali answers, the disclosure of the majesties of glorification without indication. Kumail asks again, please explain further. Ali responds, the apophatic negation of all speculation and the realization of that which can be realized. Kumail presses more, says, tell me more. Ali responds, the nullificative annihilation of the secret by the victorious rending of the veil off the mystery of the secret. Kumail pushes the question further. Ali responds, detraction of the divine oneness by the attributive apprehension of the divine unicity. Kumail presses even more. Ali responds, a light illuminating from the dawn of pre-eternity and shedding its traces upon the tablets of the temples of unicity. Again, Kumail presses. And finally, Ali, the commander of the faithful, responds by saying, extinguish the lamp, for the dawn hath indeed arisen. It has been current in the academic study of religion, especially in the West, and in the Anglophone world especially, to not look at certain issues and movements from the more phenomenological aspect. The only exception or exceptions to this rule have been individuals such as Henry Corbin, the French Iranologist, which I shall mention a few times during this talk. And I would propose that in the future, as I proposed in the paper that I recently published online about the Bâb, that Henry Corbin can serve as one of the most valuable templates for understanding the actual doctrinal aspect of the Bâbí corpus and Bâbí writings and the career and life of the Bâb itself. There's been way too much academic concentration on the historical and sociological aspects. That is not to say that these aspects are not important in and of themselves. Nevertheless, a movement or a movement such as the Bâbis and a figure such as the essence of the seven letters, the Bâb, must be understood from a perspective that goes within the text, within his own self-understanding. And this is why I propose this phenomenological approach to the study of Bâbism and Hadith Kamel specifically, because I believe that this typology in the future can serve a very helpful purpose in, number one, disentangling future Bâbi studies from any sectarian or ideological motivations, and also start laying bare exactly what the discussions and the discourses and the dialogues during the time of the Bâbi movement were really about, rather than the projections that later scholars and academics have made of it, which unfortunately seems to be the problem with Bâbi studies currently. I will use the epithet or the typology of post-Islamic in relation to the Bâbi movement, because Bâbism, although emerging out of the matrix of Iranian Islam and Shi'ism specifically, is probably, besides the Hurufi movement, the only movement within the landscape of Iranian Islam that proclaimed itself to rupture, at least to break with the Islamic Sharia as such, and to be the inaugurator of a completely new revelation and new dispensation altogether. Subsequently, during a schism that occurred in the 1860s, the Baha'i religion came out of Bâbism, and although the Baha'is have claimed the legacy of Bâbism, nevertheless, Bâbism is its own independent entity as such, and the original Bâbi movement, or the Bâyaní Gnostic religion, is very much still alive in Iran and within the Iranian diaspora. The precursor of Bâbism, or the Bâyaní Gnostic faith, is located within the career of the Sheikhi school, which was founded by Sheikh Ahmed Zainuddin al-Ahsai, was born in Rajab 1166 or May 1753 in a small Shia village situated in the oasis of Al-Aqsa or Al-Hassa near the east coast of the Arabian Peninsula in modern Bahrain. His family had been living there for several generations and converted to Twelver Shi'ism. Sheikh Ahmad left Bahrain in 1872 at the age of 20 to go study at the Atabat in the Shia Holy Land of Iraq. And prior to that, there were certain influences on the thinking of Sheikh Ahmad al-Ahsa'i that lent themselves to a predilection to Gnostic and theosophical thought within a Shia context. It has been contended by several people, including Amri Korban, that Sheikh Ahmad had inherited the library of the crypto-Ismaili Akbarian Shia theosopher Ibn Abi Jumhur al-Ahsa'i. And so as such, the ideas of Ibn Abi Jumhur had suffused and influenced Sheikh Ahmad from a very early stage. Now, this is very interesting because Sheikh Ahmad, during his career as both a quasi-founder of a new school within Twelver Shi'ism and as well as a theosopher slash philosopher theologian, had gone out of his way to not only debunk but to excoriate Ibn Arabi, the great Mursi and Sufi master. Number one, for largely sectarian reasons, because Ibn Arabi was a hyper Sunni. Sheikh Ahmad considered himself a partisan of the Ahl Bayt, the 12 Shia, and looked at the ideas of Ibn Arabi, and especially Ibn Arabi's political, or at least expressed political sympathies that he had expressed in texts like the Futuhat al-Makkiyya, the Meccan Revelations, and elsewhere, as being that against Shi'ism as such. Nevertheless, although Sheikh Ahmad spent much of his career, debating and arguing with Ibn Arabi and his school, and even the Shia Ibn Arabians that succeeded him, people like Mullah Muhsin Faiz Kashani, or the Sadri and Avicennan slash Ibn Arabi and Mullah Sadra. Even though he argued with these people and attempted or thought he was debunking them and returning the thought of or reviving the esotericism as such of the Imams, nevertheless, as many have said before, as James Winston Morris once said, most of the history of high philosophical and theosophical thought in the Islamic world is a footnote to Ibn Arabi, and I would argue that Sheikh Ahmed Ahsai is definitely not an exception here, despite his protestations to the contrary. Although Sheikh Ahmed Ahsai did not actually set out to found a new school or madhab within 12th Shi'ism, nevertheless, this is the argument and the accusation that has been hurled at him from the very earliest times of the founding of the school. Initially, the Sheikhi school was known as the Kashfiya, or those who rely on intuitive revelation or intuitive inspiration rather than on sources as such. So that, for example, whereas an usuli, or the traditional ecclesiastical establishment of Shi'ism, would rely on sources, such as the Quran, the canonical books of Hadith, which include the 4 Shia canonical books. Ibn Arabi, like a good, Sheikh Ahmed Ahsai, like a good Shia, Gnostic, would rely on dreams and the category of kashf, or revelation, as a separate category for the faithful, or the Shia Kamil, the perfect Shia, that who attains inner purification and makes that connection with the imams from the other world. Sheikh Ahmed Ahsai laid stress on a number of visionary experiences of his own as central to his thought. He showed a marked predilection for seclusion and introspection, and he was known to reflect quite a lot during the younger part of his life on the transience of the world, like many other Sufis. A succession of such vision followed, in the course of which the Sheikh met the 12 Imams and the Prophet in the imaginal world, the Alam al-Mithal, and was taught by Imam Hassan ibn Ali, the second Imam, the purpose of which to enable him to call on the Imams whenever he required an answer to any problem, whether jurisprudential, theological, or otherwise. Such visions, he writes, were experienced by him most days and nights. On 2 occasions, once with Imam Hassan and once with the Prophet Muhammad himself, he claimed to have undergone an initiatory experience involving the drinking of saliva from the mouth of Imam Ali and that of the Prophet Muhammad himself. In a significant vision, he encountered the 10th Imam, Ali al-Hadi, having complained to the Imam about the condition of the people of his time. The Imam is said to have given him several sheets of paper, saying that this is the ijazah, or the permission from us 12, namely the 12 Imams, to teach. So Sheikh Ahmed Ahsai's claim, or ijazah, rather than deriving the primary ijazah, or permission, to be an alim, one amongst the ulama, per his own claim, primarily derived from the Imams themselves rather than from other alims. Albeit, Sheikh Ahmed Ahsai also had ijazat from several eminent alims in the Atabat in Iraq, Bâyání and the Bâyání family in particular. Sheikh Ahmad says, for example, to underscore his claim about intuitive knowledge, he says, the ulama, or the clerics, derive their knowledge from one another, but I have never followed in their way. I have derived my knowledge from what I know from the imams of guidance, and error cannot find its way into my words, since all that I confirm in my books is from them, and they are preserved, or ma'soom, from sin and ignorance and error. Whosoever derives his knowledge from them shall not err, inasmuch as he is following them. Taqlid. As a result of some of these views, this was one of them, although not the primary reason. Sheikh Ahmad, during his sojourn in Iran in the 1820s, became the target of a takfir, or a declaration of unbelief, by some of the eminent clerics in Iran, notably Mullah Muhammad Taqi Bâyaní, who used these arguments about Sheikh Ahmad's purported claim to have a connection to the Imam to underscore their primary beef with him, namely his views on the spiritual resurrection as opposed to the physical resurrection that Orthodox, or at least the establishmentarian theological view of the resurrection is about. The doctrines he was taught, he was teaching, begin, like most other Neoplatonic doctrines, or Ismaili doctrines as well, that God is radically transcendent and remote, a being beyond all being. But this God obviously emanates itself, and these emanations of the Godhead are as such hypostases. And he held that the 14 infallibles, which is Muhammad, Fatima, and the 12 Imams, to be these pre-eternal hypostases, first emanated from the absolute being of the Godhead. He also held to the imaginal world, a intermediate world, where he claimed that this was the world of the true resurrection, that the resurrection that the Quran talks about, that the Orthodox look at literally. This was a spiritual event that occurs in this intermediary world, which he termed by the phrase Horqalya. And this is a phrase or word of unknown Syriac origin. It was first used, as a matter of fact, by the Illuminationist philosopher Shahabuddin Yahya Suhrawardi, and subsequently it gained currency, but with Sheikh Ahmed Ahzai it gained a special currency, because this is his contention was that the resurrection and the coming of the Imam, the eschatology of the end times, occurs for the believer within this world of Hurqalya. Sheikh Ahmed Ahzai, although patronized by the Iranian monarch of the time, Fath Ali Shah Qajar, became the point of much controversy. And of course, as Henry Corbin says, much of it had to do with jealousy, because for a alim, a cleric who had literally grown up and been spawned from the backwaters of the Shia world, his popularity was meteoric. And because of the fact that many people were drawn to him, this raised the ire of and the jealousy of many of his peers at the time. He died in 1826 on his way to Mecca, and was buried in the Al-Baqiyah cemetery in Medina, which recently was desecrated by the Wahhabi authorities of the Saudi state. He was succeeded by his pupil, who is the gentleman on the left, Sayyid Kazim al-Rashdi, who for 17 years directed the now officially known as the Shaykhiyah, or the Pushta Saris, those who approached the tomb of the Imams at the foot rather than at the head. It became a bone of contention and controversy during his ministry as the head of the Shaykhi movement, because the Shaykhis, contrary to most of the Shia, would not approach the tombs of the Imams at the head because they considered it to be disrespectful, but rather they approached the tomb of the Imams in Iraq at the foot. For 17 years, Sayyid Kazim al-Rashdi headed the Shaykhi school, and in late 1843, early 1844, he died without nominating a clear successor, which threw the Shaykhi school into a lot of problems at the time, because at that point, the attempt of Sayyid Kazim as Sheikh Ahmed Ahzai's successor was to unify the Shaykhiyah in the sense to have a united front against the Orthodox authorities who were harassing them at the time. Although they had Sayyid Kazim Rashdi and his teacher had not intended necessarily to found a new school as such. At the death of Sayyid Kazim Rashdi, a group of prominent students with very radical leanings of reading the Shaykhi doctrines congregated around one of the particular students, one of the younger but eminent students of Sayyid Kazim Rashdi, by the name of Mullah Hussein Bushrui. And this Mullah Hussein Bushrui basically did a 40-day itikaf, or 40-day retreat within the shrine of Imam Ali in Kufa to decide the matter about the succession of Sayyid Kazim al-Rashdi. And at the end of this 40-day, he set out for Iran. And it's at this point that the Wahhabi movement can be said to begin. The Bab. Sayyid Ali Muhammad Shirazi, known to posterity as the Bab, the gate or threshold, and per his own designation among several other titles, as the essence of the seven letters, That Huruf al-Sab'a, was an Iranian scion of the house of the Prophet of Islam, a Sayyid. With the ripe age of 24 in the middle of the 19th century, unleashed one of the most momentous, yet simultaneously most tragic episodes in movements claiming chiliastic Gnostic fulfillment and renewal in the history of Shi'ite Islam, since the Nizari Ismaili Imam Hassan II, ala dhikri salam, had likewise undertaken a similar mission in his Qiyamat proclamation at Alamut during the period of 1162 to 1168 Common Era. These events bear a striking resemblance and similarity and meaning a similarly tragic end, albeit not as intense, dramatic, or wide-ranging in the singularity of their violent denouement as Bâbisms. During the 6-year period of his ministry from May 23, 1844 in Shiraz to his execution for heresy in Tabriz on July 8, 1850, the Bab became for many thousands of his followers in Iraq and Iran the focus of intense adoration and at once the literal mouthpiece of the hidden Imam of the age, then the Imam of the age or the Ariser al-Qa'im in person, and finally a new theophany or manifestation of the divinity, Mazharullah, in his own right, proclaiming the abrogation of the, at the time, 1,207-year dispensational eon of Islam altogether, and the inauguration of the cycle of the Bâyaní. Seeing himself in the same theophanological light as, and even greater than, the Abrahamic messenger lawgivers who had preceded him, such as Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, this Bâyanic cycle was deemed by him to last for a duration of anywhere from between 1,511 years to 2,001 years, just as the Islamic dispensation had itself lasted in this scheme for 1,270 years. Dramatically beginning his public career as Messiah prophet on the 23rd of May 1844 with a commentary, a tafsir, on the 12th surah of the Quran, the best of stories, known as the Ahsan al-Qasas, that is the Surah of Joseph, he veritably produced a new Quran in his own right, consisting of precisely 112 surahs, complete with disconnected letters opening many of the chapters, and all the characteristic scriptural refrains, terms of phrase, imperious tone, grammatical anomalies, sonorous elliptical ambiguities, parallelisms, and generally atypical linguistic stylism typical of the high classical forms, diction, and execution of the Arabic of the perspicuous book, which is claimed, by the way, by the book itself, per the Ijaz al-Quran argument, the illimitability argument, that none can produce a single verse the like thereof. Not even the founder of Hurufism, Fazlullah Astarabadi, in his Javidan Name Kabir, the great book of eternity, had dared reach such harrowingly dizzying heights of noble and sublime audacity. And this from a mere 24-year-old member of the merchant class with no seminary training or advanced scholastic religious training whatsoever. As such, what Hamid Dabashi says of the 12th century Iranian Sufi iconoclast, Ain al-Ghuzzat al-Hamdani, is even more true of the Bab, that he broke, quote, the interdictory motifs of his inherited sacred order to the subversive point of no return, unquote. Here, in this first of his works publicized, was the most radical legacy as well as the most far-reaching of tendencies and 12-er Shiite esotericism and gnosis, nay Shi'ism to court, converge into a single point and in consummate, nay dramatic display, and so therefore epitomized and personified in the person of the Bab himself. Within days after composing the initial chapters of the Qayyim al-Asma, which he termed his tafsir, his Quran commentary, and this on the prompting of his eminent guest and advisor, the senior Shaykhi cleric Mullah Hussein Boshrui, 16 other individuals in person as well soon paid their allegiances to the Bab as his first believers, with one in absentia, totaling 17, thus constituting the letters of the living, Huruf al-Hayy, that per the Neoplatonizing ranking system of Bâbism, together with the Bab himself, made up the hierarchy of the first unity, al-Wahid al-Awwal, of all things, called the Shay. The pleroma of all things, the Kull Shay, consists of 361 in total, or 19 times 19. Number 19 is considered the most sacred number by the Bab and in Bâyání religion. It is the fundamental unit elaborating the Persian Bayan, as well as the lunar Bâyání calendar of 19 months and 19 days. I should note that this Bâyání calendar, from start to finish, is based on the Dua as-Sahar of Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, the 5th Shia Imam. And the first 19 attributes of this prayer by the 5th Shia Imam then became for the Bab the basis of the Bâyání calendar of 19 months and 19 days. After the formation of this initial hierarchy of the Bâbī movement, in early September 1844, the Bab set out for the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca, accompanied by the final member of the hierarchy of the Letters of the Living, his closest in rank, Mullah Muhammad Ali Barfushi Quddus. There he had made public claims, writing assorted epistles to various religious leaders in Mecca, including the Sharif of Mecca itself, as well as secular authorities. Returning to Iran in May-June 1845, and as the movement was growing with exponential speed, not to mention as the impact of his initial claims were wreaking some havoc in Iraq and Iran, he was arrested by authorities in the port city of Bushehr and escorted back to Shiraz, where he was placed under house arrest and soon compelled to make a public retraction of his claims at the Masjid al-Wakil in Shiraz. During this period of house arrest in Shiraz, throngs of visitors flocked to the city, and written correspondences between the Bab and various religious figures circulated back and forth from all over the Shiite centers. A cholera epidemic in Fars province during the month of September 1846 compelled the Bab to take flight from Shiraz to Isfahan, where he found brief patronage under its aging provincial governor, Manucher Khan Motamad Dole, and where initially he was even favorably received by a few religious dignitaries. There, attempting to seek an audience with the Qajar monarch Muhammad Shah in the capital Tehran, upon the death of Manucher Khan in February 1847, a fatwa calling for his death by the more conservative ulama in the city of Isfahan, opposed to his claims, forced the Bab to flee Isfahan, heading for the capital under escort provided by its new provincial governor. On the outskirts of Tehran, he was intercepted on the order of the Prime Minister, Haji Mirza Aghasi, who now emerged as the Bab's chief enemy and symbolically became to him and the Babis what Miran Shah had been centuries earlier to Fazlullah Astarabadi and the Urufis, namely the Antichrist, Dajjal. Fearing the Bab's influence on the impressionable monarch should he enter the capital and obtain an audience, Haji Mirza Aghasi redirected him under heavier escort to the northern town of Baku on the Azerbaijan-Russian border, where he was to remain from July 1847 to May 1848. Apprehensive of the Bab's growing influence and popularity and what this meant for the Muslim subjects of the empire's borders with Iran, the Russian minister in Tehran next had the Prime Minister relocate the Bab to the remote town of Chehriq near the Urmieh, where he was then placed under strict confinement. Soon after his arrival in Chehriq, he was briefly brought to Tabriz, where a kangaroo court composed of the then Crown Prince Nasiruddin Mirza and prominent ulama attempted not so much to ascertain the nature of his claims, but to publicly humiliate him. The trial of the Bab was to end with the Bab's bastinado and a fictitious letter manufactured by one of its chief presiders claiming the Bab had retracted his claims. With the Bâbī uprisings in Mazandaran underway with violent ferocity as of the summer of 1848, this following the Badasht gathering where the top Bâbī leadership had formally announced its exoteric break with Islam and Islamic Sharia earlier. The death of Muhammad Shah and the accession of Nasiruddin Shah to the Qajar throne in September 1848 convinced authorities that the Bab had to be put to death. Arguably, the initial tide of these uprisings prevented them from doing so earlier, but after the Mazandaran Bâbī uprising at Sheikh Tabarsi was brutally crushed, another soon emerged in its stead with greater ferocity, spreading to Yazd, then Neyriz in central Iran, and shortly after that to Zanjan in Azerbaijan as well. Authorities acted swiftly, and so in the early summer of 1850, the Bab was summarily brought from Tehrir back to Tabriz, where together with a disciple, he was publicly executed by firing squad at noon on July 8th, 1850 in the city's military barracks by the regiment commanded by the chief minister Mirza Taghi Khan Amir Kabir, the Amir Nizam. These are artist renditions of the execution of the Bab and the uprising at Sheikh Tabarsi. The one at the bottom is had been published in constitutional papers in Iran about 100 years ago. And this is the shrine of Sheikh Tabarsi, where the Babis, for about 7 months, fought combined clerical and government force until they were actually lied to get out of the fort, and once they did, they were massacred wholesale. Having been appointed to succeed him some months before, the 19-year-old Mirza Yahya Nuri Subh-i-Azal now emerged as the chief pontiff of the nascent Babi Church, or now the Bâyaní Gnostic faith, who, according to the author of the book of the Point of Kaf, Kitab al-Nuqtat al-Kaf, authored by Haji Mirza Jani Kashani, Subh-i-Azal buried the Bab's final remains with his own hands in an undisclosed location somewhere Iranian Azerbaijan. I'll quote from Nuqtat al-Kaf, my translation of that section. Haji Mirza Jani says, after the execution of the blessed remains of that sovereign prince were displayed in the public square of Tabriz for 2 days and 2 nights, following this, the remains were buried in a certain place of which there are hadith about its location from the Imams of righteousness. After that, the friends, namely the Babis, took out from that place his purest remains, as well as the sacrificed remains to his fidelity, meaning Agha Muhammad Ali Zunuzi Anis, and wrapped them in silken white. In consideration to his testamentary mandate, the body was brought to His Holiness the second one, the Wahid al-Thani, namely Subh-i-Azal, and that excellency placed the holy dead body with his own 2 blessed hands into a grave. And it's in the place of which there is a hadith from His Holiness the Commander of the Faithful, Imam Ali, where they have said, our Qa'im will be buried by them in such and such a place, and 19 elevated domes, of which one belongs to that holiness, and the 18 remembered for the saints, i.e. the letters of the living. I should note here that the final remains of the Bab is a point of contention between the Bâyanis and the Baha'is. The Baha'is believe that the final remains of the Bab are currently interred in Haifa, Israel, atop Mount Carmel in a shrine. The Bâyaní community do not believe this to be the case at all, and that the final resting place of the Bab still remains in an undisclosed location in Iran to this day. I should note here also that the year 1844, the commencement of the Bab's proclamation corresponding to the Hijri 1260, was precisely 1,000 years from the commencement of the occultation, the Qayba of the 12th and final Ithna Ashari Imam, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari, who went into the minor occultation in 260 Anno Hijra, which corresponds to 874 Common Era. The general significance of this fact alone should not be lost sight of in any overall assessment regarding the initial political successes of Bâbism, as it underscores the fact that messianic fervor, speculation, not to mention expectation, was rife at the time throughout the area. It may also to some extent possibly explain its ultimate political failure as well, be that as it may, and as Dennis McEwen has quite rightly pointed out, the sheer prodigious output of compositions left by the Bab during this short six-year period of his ministry, totaling some 50 volumes, each of 100 pages with 10 words of the line and 20 lines of the page, by one estimate, perhaps constitutes one of the most interestingly inspired corpus of writings available in the entire history of sectarian movements in Islamic age. This is Dennis McEwen's assessment. The Bab divided his writing into 5 grades. These 5 grades were what he classified as ayat, or Quranic sounding verses, munajat, prayers and doxologies, tafsir, or commentaries, khutbah or inter alia shu'un ilmiyah, sermons and scientific treatises, and Persian. And in the worldview and in the doctrine of the Bab, the Persian language itself is sacralized, so that the Persian language, just like in Arabic, is seen as a language of revelation in Islam, the Persian language itself was deemed a language of revelation by the Bab. Very early on, Bab had written, know that the appearance of these verses, prayers, and divine sciences is a result of a dream in which I saw the blessed head of the Prince of Martyrs, Imam Hussein, severed from his sacred body alongside the heads of his kindred. I drank 7 drops of the blood of that martyred one out of pure and consummate love. From the grace vouchsafed by the blood of the Imam, my breast was filled with convincing verses and mighty prayers. Praise be unto God for having given me to drink of the blood of him who is his proof, and make thereof the reality of my heart. Just like in the Shaykhi worldview, where the Imams are elevated beyond what is considered conventional, the Bab looks at the inspiration, the ultimate inspiration that came to him to come from the Imam. And he's basically re-articulating a Shaykhi understanding of the Imams as being divine hypostases. Of course, Orthodox Muslims will look at this and call it qulub, or extremism, but I would reclassify this and say that this constitutes the theosophical universe of high imamology, rather than qulub, strictly speaking. But I'll give you an example of how far the Bab takes it in a ziyarah, or a visitation prayer that he writes for Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet. He says in one part of it, a refrain, very beautiful, he says, say, salutations be upon thee, O ye tree of divinity, Ya ayyuhatwa shajaratul ilahiyya, which God hath disclosed from thee, within thee, from the primordial locus of the essence, and the high sublimity of the attributes. Indeed, God testifies, as do his angels, to this, that thy will in all things is the essence of the will of God, Dhat Mashiatullah, in thy rank, fi rutbatiki, and that thy volition, iradatiki, is the essence of the volition of God within thy station. This ziyarah, which only presently exists in 2 manuscripts, one of which is unfortunately unavailable to public, the other which I recently uncovered through the offices of a very good friend of mine from the Digital Occult Manuscript Library, is all in this vein. These very high, ecstatic doxologies to the Imams that elevates the Imams and the members of the Ahl Bayt to unbelievable proportions. This doctrine about the Imams and then the personification of all of these cosmic hypostases and attributes within a single person, or the Bab's proclamation of himself as the return of the hidden Imam, and then finally as the manifestation of God himself, is codified in his most systematic work, the Persian Bâyaní. I was going to read you a little bit from it, but it's a little bit too long to go through. But what I will underscore here is that throughout the Persian Bâyaní, one of the reoccurring motifs and arguments that appears again and again is the continual theophanic cycle. That the theophanies of God, or the self-disclosures of God, are continuous, never-ending. And in a sense, each theophany is greater than its last, and that in the spatio-temporal world of history as such, although one cycle ends, for example, the way that the Bab explains the end of prophecy in the cycle with the claim of the Quran about Muhammad, is that particular cycle of prophethood, or that station, had ended. And that with Ali, the cycle of wilaya, or providential guidance, had begun. So that this now cycle that began with Ali ends now with the Bab himself, who now inaugurates a new cycle which will then culminate, as the Bâyaní constantly reiterates, in a figure the Bab calls he whom God shall make manifest, Man Yasharullah. This is a serious bone of doctrinal contention between the Bâyanis and the Baha'is, because the Baha'i founder claimed the station, even though in the Persian Bâyaní the Bab himself says, and I quote, he says, if he whom God shall make manifest appears in the number qiyas, or which is equivalent to the numerical value of 1511, and all enter therein, none shall remain in the fire of rejection. If it lingers to the number of mustaqas, which is 2001, all shall enter therein, and none shall remain in the fire of rejection, as all shall be transfigured into this light. And he goes on in the rest of the Bayan that says that until, using the imagery of the tree that we find in Sufi literature as well, saying that that until a tree has grown, that the tree of the Bayan has grown, and its fruits, it will not bear fruit. The Baha'is have made the argument that their founder, Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri Baha'u'llah, was this Babi messianic figure. Subh-i-Azal, the Bab's successor, disputed this, and on very good basis. Because before the Bab died, he had written to his successor Subh-i-Azal a series of epistles in which he had written to him, you are I and I am you, anta ana wa ana anta, he and I, huwa wa ana, he and you, huwa wa anta, God and I am God and you are God, Allah wa ana Allah wa anta Allah. He writes to him also, this is a book from God, the protector, the peerless, unto God, the protector, the peerless. This is a book from Ali before the Nabil, the remembrance to the worlds, unto he whose name is equivalent to the name of the One, the remembrance to the worlds. O name of the One, Ya Isman Wahid, protect that which has been revealed in the Bayan and command by it, for verily thou art a mighty way of truth. Elsewhere he writes to him, O name of the Pre-Eternal, Ya Isman Azal, verily I testify that there is no other God besides me, the dearly precious, the best beloved, and then I testify that there is no other God besides you, the protector, the peerless. And on, these doxologies addressed to Subh-i-Azal, wherein the Bab basically claimed to be returning into Subh-i-Azal, as that Subh-i-Azal was and the Bab were identical in their station. In Nuqtatul Kaf, we read, for example, during the last 2 years of the Bab's mission, when the 5-year cycle of the minor resurrection, Qiyamat al-Sukra, had come to an end, the manifestation of His Highness the Eternal, Hazrat Azal, took place. And he, being then 19 years of age, appeared in the hamlet of Thakur, in the district of Nur of Mazandaran, and began with untaught tongue, Lasan Ummi, to utter the innate word, Kalamat al-Zati, and spontaneous verses. When the first letter from him was conveyed by means of Mirza Ali Sayyad to His Highness the Point, the Bab, the latter instantly prostrated himself to the earth in thankfulness, saying, Blessed be God for this mighty luminary which hath dawned, and this noble spate which hath arisen in the night, testifying of him that he spoke spontaneously and by the self-shining light, which is the innate word, the natural reason, the Holy Spirit, the immediate knowledge, etc., etc. Mirza Yahya Nuri Subh-i-Azal was born in 1831 in the Arab quarter of Tehran. His mother died in childbirth. Subh-i-Azal was therefore left without a mother. And just like the Prophet Muhammad had lost his father, Subh-i-Azal had no mother. He was 3 years old when his father died. And what E.G. Brown also states, Azal was 7, according to his own words. According to Mirza Buzurg and Nuri's will and testament, the upbringing of this child was left to Fatima Khanum, the mother of Mirza Hussein Ali, the future Baha'u'llah. According to Haji Mirza Jani's Nuqtatul Kaf, this stepmother was not initially very affectionate towards the young Azal. This soon changed, however, when one night Fatima dreamt a dream of the Prophet Muhammad and the Imam Ali, who asked for the child to be brought to their presence. Prophet Muhammad kissed the child and instructed Fatima Khanum that the child must be well cared for until he is delivered to the 12th Imam and Qa'im. Spending the majority of his childhood in Tehran as per family custom, he spent the summers in the village of Thakur in Nur of Mazandaran, his ancestral homeland. Subh-i-Azal was 13 years old in 1844 when the ministry of the Bab began. Hussein Ali Nuri, his older brother and the future Baha'u'llah, had become a devoted follower of the Bab and hosted meetings with Babis at their home in Tehran. They would read from the writings of the new faith, discussing and pondering the teachings of the Bab. Subh-i-Azal at this young stage was witness to all these initial gatherings until one night he claims he was spiritually attracted and affected by a high prayer, which included the repeated doxological refrain, "O my Lord, my Master." As we said, upon the Bab's death, he was appointed to succeed him as his mirror or mir'at, and he served in this capacity not without controversy from the very beginning. But it was only until the early 1860s, or actually 1863, 1864, that the true schism that later made of Bâbism into the Azali and the Baha'is occurred. Let me read you a little bit from some of Subh-i-Azal's work. Subh-i-Azal basically continues the style of writing, very similar style of writing as the Bab. Most of his early works, besides the letters, are in the first grade, which are ayat, and there are two books in particular. One is shorter, Kitab Ahmadiyya, which are composed of 53 very short surahs, and this was composed only a few months after the execution of the Bab in Tabriz. And then there is the lengthy Book of Light, the Kitab al-Nur, which is also a work in the first grade, and writes in Arabic very similar to the Quran. I'll read you the first surah of the Book of Light, Kitab al-Nur. This is the first surah known as Surah al-Bayan, the surah of the exposition. I'll read the Arabic and then my translation. Bismillah al-Aziz al-Hakim. Allah la ilaha illahu al-hayy al-muhayy min al-qayyum. La yu'ajjizu min shay mimma fi samawati wal-ard wa ma baynahuma. La ilaha illahu al-aziz al-mahbub. Amana al-bayan billahi wa ma anzala alayhi min rabbihi. Wa yushahid lahu kama shahadat al-malaikatu wa ulu al-ilm lillah. وسيو بإنه لا إله إلا هو كل عباد له وكل له ساجدون وما من إله إلا الله وأسماؤه وصفاته وله الخلق والأمر وعليه كل يرجعون هو الرب كل شيء وكل له قانتون وله الأسماء الحسنى والأمثال العليا يسبح له من في السماوات والأرض وما بينهما ويقدس له من في ملكوت الأمر والخلق وما دونهما كل عباد له وكل بأمره يعملون. In the name of God, the Grandiose, the Wise. God, no other God is there besides Him, the living, the protector, the peerless. Nothing frustrates Him of that which is in the heavens and the earth and what is between them. No other God is there besides Him, the Grandiose, the best beloved. We believe in the Bayan by God and that which has been revealed in it from its Lord, for it testifies to Him as the angels and the possessors of knowledge testify to God, bearing witness by this that no other God is there besides Him, and all are to Him prostrated. For what other God is there besides God, and His names and His attributes? To Him is the creation and the command, and all are returning to Him. He is the Lord of all things, and everything is devout towards Him. And to Him are the most beautiful names and the highest similitudes. He is the glorified by that which is in the heavens and the earth and what is in between them, and He is sanctified by whomsoever is in the kingdom of command and the creation and what is besides it. All are His servants, and everything by His command is in operation. Next one is the Surah of the Slayer, Surah al-Qatal from the earlier Ahmadiyya. I'll read you my translation. He writes, "Glorified be the one who is glorified in His praise by whatsoever is in the heavens and the earth. No other God is there besides Him, the protector, the peerless. And He is the one who produces what He desires by His command. Say all are devoted to Him. And he is the one who in his hands are the kingdoms of all things, and all are by him toppled. What other God is there besides God, the creators of the heavens and the earth and what is between them? No other God is there besides him, the dearly precious, the best beloved. And he is the one who is satisfied with what he hath willed by his cause command. Say all are manifested by his cause command. And he is the one who sends down what he desires by his command be and it is. And he is the one who makes victorious whomsoever he wills by his legions. Say all are victorious by him. And to him are the legions of the heavens and the earth and what is between them, which he sends down upon whomsoever he wills amongst his servants. Say verily we are all beseeching of his excellence. Say those who are believers by that which hath been sent down in the Bâyaní, verily they are the triumphant. And those who turn away from that which hath been revealed, verily those are the ones to whom have come the great loss. Say, verily the difference between the word fire and light is 5. So consider, O possessors of insight, all of you together. Verily this is a book diffused amongst you by the truth, for lo, we are of the diffusers. And lo, nothing shall frustrate us from that which is in the dominion of all things, for verily we are the powerful. And indeed, we create the heavens and the earth and what is between them, and lo, in that are sure signs for the people of consideration. Say, this is the exegesis, the ta'wil of that which you have sent down. No doubt is there in it, for all to us are submitted. And indeed, we send down what we desire by our command be and it is. And nothing shall extirpate us from that which is in the kingdom of all things, and all are returning to us. Say, fear God, O denizens of earth, then be devout. Verily, this is that which we have commanded you by in the book. No doubt is there in it, for all are by our command in operation. And to us are the keys to the mercy of the heavens and the earth and what is between them. We shed our resplendence upon whom we desire from amongst our servants. Say all are beseeching of our excellence. We have sent down the book by the truth. In it is the elaboration of all things, and all are by our verses invoking. Say, fear God and be faithful by that which hath been sent down by God in the book, so that perchance you shall contemplate the great good. Say, fear God, and then make God victorious when the crier calls during the struggle. And do not tarry. That is what we have commanded you by in the cause, for verily we are of the commanders. Verily we instructed you in this, that you grasp the mercy of your Lord. Will you not be mindful? And the excellence of your Lord encompasses all things, and all are to his beneficence beseeching. Say, fear God, then be present between the hands of God, so that perchance you shall be shown mercy. No soul shall be raised to brilliance, and neither given victory by him in descending to his own knowledge. Say, verily we are all pardoned by him. Say, you who have been raised to brilliance, make God victorious by that which through him you have been made powerful. Say, forgive us from assisting those who are weak in their faith. Will you not be devout? Verily we do not instruct any soul without measure. And what is sufficient to it, will you not understand? That is the book in which there is no doubt. Say, all are by his command in operation. Fear God, then make your Lord victorious. No other God is there besides him, the protector, the peerless. He is the one who in his hands is the dominion of all of the heavens and the earth, and all are returning to him. This is not from the Quran. This is from the Loha Ahmadiyya, or Book of Ahmadiyya by Subh-i-Azal. Basically writing a doxology in the first grade of the Bâyaní writings, which are ayat, similar to the Quranic verses. I read you also translation of Subh-i-Azal's prayer from the treatise Akhlaq al-Ruhani, the ethics of the spiritually minded. This is one of the prayers that occurs in the final part of the treatise. Subh-i-Azal prays, glorified art thou, O God, my God. I indeed testify to thee in all things at the moment when I am in thy presence in pure servitude upon this. But verily thou art God, no other God is there besides thee. Thou art unchanged, O my God, within the elevation of grandeur and majesty, and shall be unalterable, O my Desirous Boon, within the pinnacle of power and perfection, inasmuch as nothing shall frustrate thee, and nothing shall extinguish thee. Thou art unchanged as thou art, the capable above thy creation, and thou art unalterable, as thou indeed shall be as from before, inasmuch as nothing is with thee of anything, and nothing is in thy rank of anything. Thou accomplishest and willeth and doeth and desirest. Glorified art thou, O God, my God, with thy praise. Salutations be upon the primal point, the chemist of thy visage, and the light of thy direction, and the luminosity of thy beinghood, and the clarity of thy selfhood, and the ocean of thy power, by all that which thou hast bestowed upon him of thy stations, and thy culminations, and thy foundations. For nothing shall frustrate thee of anything, and nothing shall extinguish thee of anything. No other God is there besides thee, for verily thou art the Lord of the worlds. And blessings, O my God, be upon the one who was the first to believe in thee, the visage of thy selfhood, and the decree of thy direction, and upon the one who was the last to believe in thee, the essence of thy direction, and the visage of thy holiness, and upon those whom ye have made martyrs or witnesses, unknown except by thy command, nor restrained except by thy wisdom. Then upon those whom ye have promised that ye shall make him manifest on the day of resurrection, and he whom ye will appraise on the day of the return, by all which thou wilt bestow upon him of thy power and thy strength. For nothing shall extinguish thee, and nothing shall frustrate thee. Ye determine all things, for verily thou art powerful over whatsoever thou willeth. And I indeed testify, O my God, between thy hands, that verily there is no other God besides thee, and that he whom ye shall make manifest on the day of resurrection is the chemist of thy creativity, and the visage of thy manifestation, and the direction of thy victory, and the substance of thy pardoning, and the branch of thy singularity, and the clarity of thy unicitarianism, and the pen of the letter Nun, al-Qalam al-Nun, within thy beinghood, and the setting of the cause command within thy essentiality, inasmuch as there is no difference between him and thee, except that he is thy servant in thy grasp, such that whatsoever is in the heavens and the earth and what is between them will then be filled by his name and by his light, until it be made apparent that no other God is there besides thee, and no beloved is there like unto thee, and no desired one is there other than thee, and no dread is there of thy like, and no justice of thy equal. No other God is there besides thee. Glorified art thou, O God, and by thy praise. Blessings, O my God, be upon the guide to the throne of the hidden cloud, and the path to thy presence, and the Sinai of authorization, and the caller by thy Logos self, and the crier of thy permission between thy hands, and the ariser of thy attendance by thy command. Then the triumph, O my God, by all that which thou wilt bestow upon him of thy power. Then that which will be made manifestly apparent of the word upon the earth, and what is upon it by thy grandeur, and also in this, that nothing shall ever put out his light. Verily, nothing shall frustrate thee of anything, and nothing shall extinguish thee of anything. Thy mercy encompasseth all things, and verily thou art powerful over what ye have willed. And to the one who prays to thee, thou art the hearing, the answering, for verily thou art observant over us, and verily thou art high praised beyond that which the inner hearts can comprehend. The direful mischief, the Bâbi or Azali Baha'i schism. According to the book Hasht Behesht, co-authored by Mirza Khan Kermani and Sheikh Ahmed al-Ruhi, Subh-i-Azal, having retired into a seclusion in Baghdad after leaving Iran in 1852, inviolable save to a chosen few, his elder brother, Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri Baha'u'llah, found practical direction of affairs in his own hands. He was a man from his youth upward that associated and mixed with men of every class, whereby he had acquired a certain breadth of disposition and religious pliability, which attracted around him men of like mind, to whom some slackening of the severe code of the Bâyání was not unwelcome. Certain of the old school Babis, such as Mullah Muhammad Ja'far al-Naraqi, Mullah Rajab Ali Qahir, Haji Sayyid Muhammad of Isfahan, Haji Sayyid Jawad Karbala'i, Haji Mirza Ahmadi Khatib, and Mutawalli Washi of Qom, Haji Mirza Muhammad Reza, and others, perceiving this tendency to innovation and relaxation, remonstrated so vigorously with Mirza Hussein Ali that he left Baghdad in wrath and went towards the Sulaimanian mountains, in the neighborhood of which abode he lived amongst the Kurds for nearly 2 years. During all this period, his whereabouts was unknown to the Babis at Baghdad. When at length it became known, Subh-i-Azal wrote a letter to him inviting him to return. About this time, Mirza Asadullah, entitled Dayan, one of the second group of the Letters of the Living, or Second Unity, called by the author of the Hashbehesht the Judish Iscariot of his people, who had been appointed by the Bab to act as a secretary to Subh-i-Azal, and who was learned in the Hebrew and Syriac language, declared himself to be he whom God shall manifest. One Mirza Ibrahim forthwith believed in him. Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri Baha'u'llah, after a protracted discussion with him, instructed his servant Mirza Muhammad of Mazandaran to slay him, which was accordingly done. Shortly after this, Mirza Abdullah called Qoqa advanced the same claim, and he in turn was followed by one Hossein Milani, known as Hossein Jan, who made the same pretension in Tehran. The matter did not end here, for these pretenders were followed by Sayyid Hussein of Isfahan and Mirza Muhammad Nabil of Zarand, called the tongue-tied by the author of Hashbehesht, who says also that the matter came to such a pass that everyone on awakening from his first sleep in the morning adorned his body with this pretension. The author of Hashbehesht continues, now when Mirza Hussein Ali beheld matters in this discordant state, he bethought himself of advancing the same claim, considering that from the prominent position he had been long held as practical director of affairs, he stood a better chance of success than any previous claimant. And in this idea he was greatly encouraged by Mirza Aghajan of Kashan. Little by little his resolution took more definite shape, and he fell into thinking how he might compass the destruction of such of the Babis as were likely to oppose his contemplated action. About this time, the clergy of Baghdad, Karbala, and Najaf began to complain loudly because of the large number of Babis who continued to flock from Persia to Baghdad. The Persian government accordingly instructed Mirza Hussein Khan, the Mushir-e-Dawleh, his representative at the court of the Ottoman Sultan, to petition the Turkish authorities for the removal of the Babis to some part of their dominions remote from the Persian frontier. To this request, the Turkish authorities, anxious to put a stop to the quarrels, which were continually arising between the Babis and the Muslims, acceded. The Babis were summoned to Constantinople, whence 4 months after their arrival, they were sent to Adrianople. This was in 1863. On their arrival in that city, Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri Baha'u'llah, still instigated and encouraged by Agha Mirza Aghajan, gradually made public his claim to be not only he whom God shall make manifest, the Babi Messiah, but an incarnation of the deity himself, and began to send letters and epistles in all directions. And now, according to the author of Hashbehesht, began a series of assassinations on the part of the Baha'is, of the supporters of Subh-i-Azal. All prominent supporters of Subh-i-Azal who withstood Mirza Hussein Ali's claims were marked out for death, and in Baghdad, Mullah Rajab Ali Qahir and his brother Haji Mirza Ahmad, Haji Mirza Muhammad Reza, and several others fell one by one to the knife or the bullet of the assassin. The author of the Hashbehesht brings yet graver charge against Mirza Hussein Ali and asserts that he caused poison to be placed on one side of a dish for Subh-i-Azal, which was to be set before him one day when Subh-i-Azal was invited amongst them, giving instruction that the poison side was to be turned towards his brother. As it happened, however, the food had been flavored with onions, and Subh-i-Azal, disliking this flavor, he refused to partake of the dish. Mirza Hussein Ali, according to the author of Hashbehesht, fancying that his brother suspected his design, ate some of the food from his side of the plate. But the poison, having suffused itself to some extent through the whole mass, he was presently attacked with vomiting and other symptoms of poisoning. Thereupon he assembled his own followers and intimates and declared that Subh-i-Azal had attempted to poison him. Shortly after this, according to the author of Hashd-Behesh, another plot was laid against Subh-i-Azal's life, and it was arranged that Muhammad Ali, the barber, should cut his throat while shaving him in the bath. On the approach of the barber, however, Subh-i-Azal divined his design, refused to allow him to come near, and on leaving the bath, instantly took another lodging in Adrianople, and separated himself from thereafter from the companions of Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri Baha'u'llah. Some while after this, says the author of Hashd-Behesh, Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri devised a new stratagem. A number of letters were written in different handwritings by Agha Mirza Agha Jan, by Meshkin Khalam, by Abbas Afendi, and other partisans of Mirza Hussain Ali, to sundry Turkish statesmen and officials to the following effect, quote, "About 30,000 of us Babis are concealed in disguise in and around Constantinople, and in a short while we shall arise. We shall first capture Constantinople, and if Sultan Abdul Aziz and his ministers do not believe in our religion, we shall depose and dismiss them from their rule and administration, and our king and masters Mirza Yahya Subh-i-Azal," unquote. These letters were left by night at the Sultan's palace and the houses of different ministers by Mishkin Kalam and other partisans of Mirza Hussain Ali resident in Constantinople. When next day these letters were discovered by Turkish authorities, which had treated the Babis so far with kindness, affording them shelter and hospitality, they were naturally greatly incensed. The letters were forthwith laid before the Persian ambassador, and at the joint assembly of Turkish and Persian officials, it was decided to exile the Babi chiefs to some remote island or fortress on the coast. Meanwhile, Haji Sayyid Muhammad of Isfahan, a philosopher of note, and Agha Jan Bey, nicknamed Kachkula, the skew cap, who held the rank of lieutenant colonel in the Turkish army, discovered how matters stood and made known to the Ottoman authorities the hostility which existed between the two brothers at Adrianople. The only good result which followed from their intervention was that it was decided by the Turkish government to exile Mirza Yahya Subh-i-Azal and Mirza Hussain Ali Baha'u'llah not to the same place but to different places. The former was ordered to be sent with his family and 4 of Baha'u'llah's followers, to wit Mishkin Kalam, Mirza Ali Sayyah, Abul Qafar, to Cyprus, the later with his family about 80 of his adherents and 4 of Subh-i-Azal's followers to Acre in then Palestine. Before the transfer was actually effected, however, Mirza Nasrullah was poisoned by Mirza Hussain Ali at Adrianople. The other 3 Bâyanis or Azalis were assassinated shortly after their arrival at Acre in a house which they occupied near the barracks. The assassins being Abdul Karim, Muhammad Ali the barber, Hussein the water carrier, and others. The author of the Hashd-Behesh continues. He says that amongst those who had first inclined to follow Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri, a merchant named Agha Muhammad Ali of Isfahan, who at the time resided in Constantinople. Owing to certain discoveries which he had made, however, his faith had undergone considerable abatement and signs of coolness had been observed in him. Mirza Abul Qasim, the Bakhtiyari robber, was consequently dispatched from Acre with instructions to bleed that block of heedlessness whose blood is in excess, unquote. On his arrival in Constantinople, he took up his lodging with the unsuspecting merchant in the caravanserai. Here he remained till one day he found opportunity to break open his host's private safe and abstract therefrom. Part of this sum he retained for himself, for the remainder he bought clothes, stuffs, and other goods which he sent to Acre. In return for this service, he received the following epistle from Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri Baha'u'llah. O phlebotomist of the divine unity, a phlebotomist is a blood letter, throb like the artery in the body of the contingent world, and drink of the blood of the block of heedlessness that he turned aside from the aspect of thy Lord, merciful. Unquote. Of the other assassinations cited by the author of the Hashpehesh, those of the following persons were independently mentioned by Subh-i-Azal, Mullah Rajab Ali Qahir, Agha Ali Muhammad of Isfahan, brother of the Bab, Mirza Nasrullah, Haji Mirza Ahmad, brother of Haji Mirza Jani, Haji Ibrahim. 16 in total. Regarding the poisoning incident that occurred in Adrianople mentioned above, Badiye Mirati Nuri, one of the kinswomen of Subh-i-Azal, has this to say about the incident. It was in fact the Mirza, i.e. Mirza Hussein Ali Baha'u'llah, who had sought to poison His Holiness Azal. On the day in question, Sultan Khanum, entitled the Greatest Holy Leaf, who at the time was still a believer in her most august uncle, Azal, with blinks and glances, when the food was brought out by the servants, indicated that he should not partake of the meal placed before him. When the Mirza insisted that His Holiness should eat, His Holiness refused. Thereupon the aforementioned saw that His Holiness had become appraised of their evil intentions to kill him, and therefore, in order to deflect attention from the deed, he proceeded to eat a few portions from that plate of food himself. Immediately his state was overturned, he became violently ill. He then threw the plate of food in the courtyard outside. In that yard there was a dog who immediately began to eat this discarded food and thereupon fell dead shortly thereafter. She goes on to say, no one has asked the truth of the matter, O noble gentlemen who have twisted the truth of the facts. The kitchen and its cook on that day was at your exclusive disposal. It was you who had graciously invited His Holiness over to lunch as your guest in your home. Had he hidden the vial of poison in his sleeve, thereby depositing in the food right under your noses without you noticing? How is this possible? This poisoning incident is taken by the Baha'is as a proverbial bloody shirt of Uthman, as basically a way of besmirching Azal's character. But the fact of the matter is that according to the earliest sources, the incident was directly opposite to what the Baha'i sources have claimed. E.G. Brown, the British Orientalist from Cambridge, in the 1890s traveled to both Acre as well as Famagusta, Cyprus, and interviewed both parties, and subsequently collected a huge Bâbí manuscript library, which he brought back here to England, and which is now deposited in the Cambridge Manuscript Collection. This is the shrine of Subh-i-Azal in Larnaca, Cyprus. Talk a little bit about the constitutional era Bâyanis. The Bâyani community not only survived after the schisms of the 1860s and what the state and clergy in Iran had done to the Bâbis and the pogroms, but later went on to make a significant impact on the Iranian political and literary landscapes, especially during the period of the Iranian constitutional revolution of 1905 to 1909, including just prior to it during the Tobacco Rebellion 1891, 1892, and thereafter. According to Hamid Dabashi in his recent book, Shi'ism, A Religion of Protest, he says that a clear line can be mapped from the revolution of the Bab, or the 6 years of the ministry of the Bab, to the Tobacco Rebellion, to the Constitutional Revolution. Both Sheikh Ahmed Ruhi and Mirza Agha Khan Kermani, the veritable godfathers of the Constitutional Revolution, later who was the author of the Bâyani Apologia Hashpehesh, which I just quoted from, were sons-in-law of Subh-i-Azal. That would be the gentleman on bottom left, the two gentlemen on the bottom left and the bottom right. Notable Bâyanis included the pro-constitutionalist revolutionaries and parliamentarian Sayyid Jamaluddin Va'iz Isfahani, Malik Mutakallimin, Mirza Jahangir Khan Shirazi, and the entire Dawlatabadi clan. Especially the brother and sister activists Yahya and Sadiqeh. Sadiqeh was Iran's first modern feminist and the first woman who emerged onto the streets of Tehran unveiled in modern times. She also directed the first modern all-girls school in Isfahan. Yahya, for his part, being one of the two appointed temporal, not spiritual successors to Subh-i-Azal, was the modern architect of the Iranian educational system under Reza Shah. Notable literary figures such as Allame Muhammad Qazvini, a longtime collaborator of E.G. Brown's, was a Bâyaní. Likewise, Ali Akbar de Khuda, the author of the most comprehensive Persian lexicographical encyclopedia dictionary, has been rumored to have been a Bâyaní. Muhammad Ali Furuqi, a leading statesman and politician, a three-time prime minister, and the premier of Iran at the Allied invasion in 1941, the man who facilitated the accession of Muhammad Reza Pahlavi to the throne upon his father's abdication, is widely known to have been a Bâyaní. He has also been claimed as a Freemason, but this latter claim may originate as a slur. While none of this attests to the political victory of Bâbism per se, as per its original program, neither does it instance its to court political defeat either, quite the contrary. We note that until quite recently, and for decades, Baha'i authorities denied all agency, including the very existence of the Bâyaní community amongst their own. This urban Baha'i legend regarding the non-existence of quote-unquote Azali Babis, or rather the Bâyanis, was finally discredited and laid to rants once and for all publicly on the internet upon the launching of the Bâyaní community's official website, Bâyaní.com, in 2004 and 2005. Although the Bâyaní community has continued to exist, nevertheless, to this day, there is no focus of charisma or organization as such. In 2005, continuing the esoteric legacy of the Bab and Subh-i-Azal, the Fatimiyya Sufi order commenced its working in Australia, and the Fatimiyya Sufi order seeks to continue the esoteric and mystical legacy of the two primary figures of the Bâyaní Gnostic faith. The religion of the Bâyan is unique, and that it is the only religious form that is explicitly Shi'ite, venerating the central figures of Shi'ism just as passionately as any Shi'ite, and seeing its own central figures as their return, while simultaneously being post-Islamic. Another way of saying this would be to assert that while Bâbism broke with the exoteric forms of the Islamic past, it did not necessarily rupture its interior connection or doctrinal continuity with the Islamic past in the slightest. In fact, it augmented it and alchemically transmuted it, as it were, to a higher octave. Given this, one can say that the religion of the Bâyan holds to an eternal religion which is Tawheed, which permutates and transforms into infinite progressive forms from one aeon to the next, the beginning of each aeon being, as it were, per the Bâyan, the Qiyamah, or resurrection. As such, if one were to hold the events at Alamut as the apotheosis of esotericism in Islam, then the Bâyan, doctrinally speaking, stands as the apotheosis of Alamut. Thank you. Take some questions now.
Thank you very much. Would you kindly expound a little further on the concept of the Bab and how it differs between what you described as a Bâyání Gnostic faith and the contemporary Baha'i faith?
Can you fine-hone your question a little bit more, please?
Yes. I'm interested in what is the basis for the idea of the Bab
Okay.
as it's understood within the two respective movements of Subh-i-Azal and Bâbism.
The concept of Bab itself in Shi'ism emerges from 2 points. You can look at it from the historical angle, or you can look at it from the doctrinal angle. If you look at the hadith or the akhbar literature, or which is the Shi'ite hadith, within the corpus of the hadith that at least Khomeini great compiler of the Usul Min al-Kafi. In various places, the Imams identified themselves, the Imams of the Ahl Bayt identified themselves as Babullah, the gate to God. On the historical plane, when the final 12th Ithna Ashari or 12th Imam goes into occultation, there's a series of 4 gates, right? Or Bab, Abwab Arba'a, the 4 gates. On the popular level, the word Bab, right, denotes these 4 gates, after the 4th of which, according to a letter attributed to the Imam, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari, there shall be no more gates. Nevertheless, on the theological level, the very title Bab refers to the Imam simultaneously. And it's in that sense that the Bab in his Qayyum al-Asma, in his commentary on the Surah of Joseph, uses that title. Now, besides the title Bab, Sayyid Ali Muhammad Shirazi, the Bab, also had several other titles. In the Persian Bayan, he refers to himself as the essence of the 7 letters, the primal point, Supreme Lord, etc., etc. This is all theophanic language, obviously. It shouldn't be taken in any incarnationist sense. Nevertheless, the way that the Baha'i understanding of the concept of Bab differs from that of the Bayanis is in the following way. The Baha'is have gone out of their way to demote, in many ways, the rank, the position, the very self-understanding of the Bab, right? To make him, in their reconstructed narrative of early Bâbism, to be a mere forerunner of their prophet founder, Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri Baha'u'llah, right? In that piece that I published online, I actually showed that, although some of the Bayanis have a few times objected to the continued use of the title Bab, nevertheless, the actual text of the Bab himself, he uses that title himself. He uses that title in his first public work, all the way to the Persian Bayan, and into some of his final works, like the Book of the 5 Grades.
Mr. Azal, excuse me, I was late, unfortunately. Could you tell me where you fit into the family tree of Subh-i-Azal?
Where I fit into the family is through my great-great-great-grandmother, Tahira Qurratul Ain. I'm a descendant of Qurratul Ain.
Not of Azal?
Not of Azal, no.
Oh, but you nevertheless have the name Azal?
Yes.
I
yes,
see.
Yeah.
I thought you fitted in that tree. And the Subh-i-Azal wrote mainly in Farsi or in Arabic?
In both Farsi and Arabic.
In both?
Yes.
Like the Bab himself?
Like the Bab himself, exactly.
And where are his writings available? Where can one get to?
On the website Bâyaní.com, there's some of his writings available. In the Brown collection in Cambridge University, some of his writings are available. At the Cambridge, at the British Museum, there's a Bobby collection that has a few of his works. His works are actually dispersed all over the place. The Bâyaní community in Iran has been engaged for about a decade or more now in getting all the various family heirlooms of the Bâyaní community in Iran together, and we're slowly beginning to publish these on the internet.
I see. And how many members are there?
This is the good question, because there is no organization like the Baha'is. It's difficult to say, but I would say a few thousand. There was, just as a conservative guess, one could say about 3,000 or 4,000 Bâyanis dispersed through various parts of Iran, and then amongst the Iranian diaspora as well.
And are they persecuted the way the Baha'is are, or are they?
The Bâyanis have, especially since the death of Subh-i-Azal, have been practicing taqiyya as a safe, to protect themselves.
Yes.
But if the regime finds out if someone is a quote-unquote Bâbi, yes, they will persecute. In fact, right after the revolution in '79, there were several cases where members of the quote-unquote Azali community were rounded up by the various revolutionary committees. Yeah. But right now, the Bâyaní community basically keeps its head below radar, so nobody knows who it is. And because there is no organization, there's no way for the state to keep tabs on these people either. So it's mainly through families.
So it is a mouth-to-mouth propagation of the faith?
Yes, basic. But the Bâyanis, per the Bâyan, are not allowed to proselytize. So children must pick their own religion. The parents are not responsible for proselytizing or brainwashing their children into their religion.
Brainwashing, I understand, but teaching?
Teaching, yes.
It's not necessarily.
There's no insistence on
Yes,
this.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But do you teach others as well? I mean,
Well,
Yes.
I have known of Bâyanis who didn't know, who became Bâyani subsequently later in their life, but didn't know that their parents had been Bâyanis. We have that situation where you have mixed families in Iran, where the wife is a Bâyani and the husband is something else, and vice versa, and the children don't know what religion their parents practice. But generally, the Bâyani community practices Taqiyya.
On your website, in fact, you are referred to as the great Sheikh of the Fatimiyya.
Yes.
And
Grand.
I beg your pardon?
The grand.
The Grand
Yes,
Sheikh,
yes.
sorry. The Grand Sheikh of the Fatimiyya. Salafis is it or Sufis?
Sufis.
Sufis.
Yeah.
And that is a Bâyani
Yes,
organization
yes.
that you have set up?
Yes.
And you have set that up?
Yes, and me and several other people in Australia.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you are the group that
Yes.
represents the whole thing.
We are the group that represents the whole thing in the West
The
at this
Bâyani.
time. The Bâyanis in Iran to this day have not organized themselves. This has been a problem for a very long time, and since the passing of Yahya Dawlatabadi in 1939, there really hasn't been a charismatic focus within the Bâyani community in Iran. It's slowly been dwindling away. And during this time, it has allowed the Baha'is to monopolize much of the discourse of Bâbism and what have you. And as a result of various circumstances in 2005, myself and several other people, we organized ourselves into the Fatimiyya Sufi order. I already had an ijazah from another Sufi order to begin with, and because of my Bâbi pedigree, through my great ancestor, Qurratul Ain, I formulated the Fatimiyya Sufi order, basically to continue the flame of the teachings of the Bâb and Subh-i-Azal alive. And this was actually sanctioned by the man who initiated me into Sufism about 20 years ago. That I should do
How
this.
many years ago?
20 years ago.
20 years ago, yeah. Was that in Iran?
No, that was in America.
In America? And what are the relations like between the Imams and the Bâyanis and the Baha'is?
The relations are not good, I can tell you that. I mean, the Baha'is have basically lied about the history of Bâbism. The whole narrative history of Bâbism and the Bâyan is basically a manufactured history. It's a propaganda. British Orientalist E.G. Brown attempted to represent this history correctly. He was subsequently slandered and libeled by certain Baha'i figures like Hassan Baluzi. And the Baha'is have monopolized on these Bâbi texts. The largest collection of Bâbi manuscripts in the world is in the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, Israel.
In Haifa?
Yet they will not share any of these works with anyone.
I see.
No independent scholars anywhere. So the relations are not good. In 2005, when the website, or 2004, when the website Bionic.com came out, for the first 12 months, that site was experiencing hacks once or twice a month. Several of these hackings were traced and emerged to have been coming from what the Hyphen Baha'i organization, the main Baha'i organization, an agency they call the Baha'i Internet Agency that is responsible for Baha'i propaganda on the internet. And
Baha'i Internet
agency, yeah. But the history of Bâyani relations has not been good. It can be better, provided that certain texts are released for public scrutiny. What the Bâyani community merely asks for is that the history be represented correctly, that these texts be made available for study and discussion and whatnot. And the Baha'is won't allow that to happen.
I don't want to monopolize this if anybody has this question. I'm full of
Could you
questions.
mention perhaps a little about how your research has affected you personally?
Sure. Yes, my research for now the last 12 years, especially on the internet, has affected me in many ways. I have been targeted personally by the Baha'i Internet Agencies and Baha'i authorities. I have been libeled and slandered, and there was a serious attempt up until a few years ago to completely demolish my reputation. All of this stopped about a year or so ago, or actually a little less than that, after a lawsuit in the United States was lost by the main Baha'i organization to a rival they had sued for trademark infringement. And this is the lawsuit that the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States launched against the Orthodox Rimiyat Baha'is. And once this case concluded, the attack stopped. Nevertheless, during that decade, my emails were hacked several times. My associations with various people were disrupted on the internet. Like I said, the website Bâyaní.com was hacked into on a regular basis, and just generally intimidating behavior and what have you. In fact, I would go so far to say that at least online, on the internet, this task force of the Baha'i Internet Agency has acted in almost identical fashion as to how the thugs of the present regime have acted against dissidents. It's exactly the same kind of behavior. It is basically, you're dealing with an organization that is big, that doesn't wish any rivals, and what the Bâyanis represent is a alternative counter-narrative to the history and the very raison d'etre of Baha'ism. So they deal with them in the way they deal with them.
What would you say that the Bab stood for that is contrary to what the Baha'is stand for, or what Baha'u'llah stood for?
That's a huge discussion, but what the Bab stood for, I mean, you can look at this theologically. What the Bab stood for is a new independent revelation,
Precisely.
right?
Yeah.
But the Persian Bayan argues that these revelations have a time span. You don't have these things happening every day. The Bab was, in my opinion, probably one of the greatest luminaries in terms of an esoteric and a mystical mind. I mean, the prayers and some of these writings that have never been translated before occur on a horizon that is higher than